Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my garden. If you live in the South, you know that heat, humidity, and unpredictable weather are what we deal with on a daily basis, especially in the summer. You also know that if you've tried growing roses, you are plagued with black spot and much disease. What if I told you I've compiled my list of my absolute favorite roses that not only survive, but strive and flourish in our heat and humidity? I will give you my top five at the end, and those top fives are my absolute favorite for disease resistant, for fragrance, and of course, for beauty. The first one we want to talk about today is my second favorite, and she is called Sweet Mademoiselle. Sweet Mademoiselle is a star roses and plant rose. She is extremely fragrant, very prolific. She's a floribunda rose and grows on a long stem, so she makes an excellent cut flower. Her color is that of a coral color, somewhat in the pink family, but more on the coral side. She's absolutely stunning. So much so, I have three of her in my garden. I seldom ever see black spot, and if I do, it's all the way at the bottom of the rose, never ever at the top portion. Second on the list is Bliss Parfuma. Bliss Parfuma is a shrub rose. She is extremely fragrant, beautiful, and blooms in clusters of pink, light pink blooms. And when I tell you they're gorgeous, they're absolutely gorgeous. She's highly fragrant. She is considered a compact shrub rose, and she is a vigorous grower in that she comes out the gate swinging. Usually, you have roses that take a few years to be established. She was blooming profusely her first year. Now, most of my roses come from three places: Star Roses and Plants, Easy Elegance Rose, as well as David Austin Roses. So, those are the three sources of the roses that we'll talk about today in the video. Number three is Princess Charlene de Monaco. Princess Charlene de Monaco is a shrub rose as well, and she does produce beautiful cupped shape pink blooms that have little ruffles to them. They're absolutely beautiful. And she is also very fragrant. Next, we're going to talk about Earth Angel. The name says it all, y'all. This rose is angelic when it blooms. It is so beautiful. It is a very pale pink, and it blooms also in clusters of blooms. They're very cupped shape and look almost like a peony when they're in bloom. I've used them in floral arrangements in the past, and people thought that they were peonies. They are exquisite, so much so I have four of her in my garden. The next three that we're going to talk about strive in the heat of the summer. The first one is called Belt Savannah, and the name gives it away. This is another star roses and plant rose, and she has exquisite blooms and also makes a great cut flower. She is also pink, but she has a little touch of coral in her pinkness, whereas Earth Angel is a very light pink. She's a more saturated pink color. My absolute favorite rose in my yard is the next one we're going to talk about. This is Crazy Love. Crazy Love Rose is in the orangey peach apricot family. And she's somewhat of a chameleon because she starts out almost looking red, and then she changes and fades to the absolute palest peachy color. Y'all, non-stop blooms. Her first flush is always a sight to behold, and then she reblooms throughout the season. So I love her because of that. Now, none of these roses will have quite as many blooms the second flush as they do the first, but they all do rebloom. New to me this year and was gifted by one of my garden friends on Instagram is a rose called Ballroom, also by Star Roses and Plants. You will notice a trend with my roses. Most of them are from the same company, and the reason is because they grow roses that thrive in the South. Although I love English roses, our heat and humidity tends to do them a disservice. And by the end of the season, they look scraggly because they've dropped their leaves because of black spot and they struggle under our humidity. Whereas these other roses that I'm talking about actually love the heat and humidity and doesn't miss a beat. So ball gown is stunning. She is pink, have somewhat of a pleated bloom, and just is fragrant as well. I've only had a couple blooms on her so far because I literally planted her about a month ago. So I'm waiting for her to come into her own, but I already know she's a favorite of mine. Another heat tolerant rose is Pinktopia. She's from Easy Elegance Rose, which is a Bailey's Nursery rose. And let me tell you, she just keeps churning out the blooms. Her pink is almost the color of this Peggy Martin climbing rose that's behind me, and she is an absolute stunner. I have 3 of her in my yard, and I'm hoping to add 2 more because I like her that much. Next, we're going to talk about the English roses. No video on roses would be complete without the English rose, which seems to be the standard of roses everywhere. I will say, though, that a lot of the English roses do not do well in the South. I have tried 15, and out of that 15, I have several that I like, but several that I love. There's a difference. The first of the English roses we're going to talk about today is Hermione. Hermione is an English shrub rose, and it happens to also be my middle name. So you know I had to have this rose. This rose is the palest of peachy pinky color, and she blooms in clusters and blooms profusely. She is also surprisingly disease resistant for an English shrub rose. She is planted right in front of my office on the other side of where I'm standing, and I'm waiting for her to come back again with her next flush. The second of my English roses that I love is called the Shepherdess. I have 2 of her in my garden that my oldest daughter bequeathed to me as a gift one year for my birthday. They are beautiful. They are floriferous, meaning they bloom a lot, and they are highly disease resistant. So far, that's 2 English roses that are highly disease resistant, bloom profusely, are fragrant, and love the South. The third is a climber, because you know I have to throw a climber in there so that you have options. The third English rose climber is Crown Princess Margarita. Now, there may be others, but these are what I own, and so I'm speaking from experience. Crown Princess Margarita is somewhat of a pleated rose, y'all, cupped also. She's gorgeous. She's just beautiful. She is what you would think an apricot rose should look like. She does take a while to get going. In my garden, she did, but now she's blooming and she's pumping out the blooms. She does have a small bit of black spot on her, but not as much as Bathsheba, which is another English climber that I own. Bathsheba tends to pitch a hissy fit every spring and drops her leaves and goes into a hiatus. And then when she comes out swinging. The second time she comes out, she is full of healthy looking leaves and she blooms well. It's just the first show she is without leaves because of the disease on her. Do you need something for a sloped area, the front of the border, or maybe a climber? These next roses fit that bill. The first we're going to talk about is the Above and Beyond Rose. The Above and Beyond Rose is absolutely stunning apricot goodness. I am adding 5 of these to the garden. I have seen them in 2 of my friends' personal gardens and absolutely adore them. Let me just tell you, peach and apricot are my favorite colors, so I'm always on a skew on the orangey side for a rose. But these are just prolific in bloom and they grow nicely. You know, some take a while. No, these grow nicely and they fill in a nice arbor. They'll fill in a nice trellis. So put them in a place where you want them to grow and show off. They do that well. Not only does Above and Beyond survive and thrive in the South, but she's cold hardy too. So she's a great one to plant if you live in the Midwest or if you live in the South, as far as Texas. Next, we're going to talk about Zaide. Zaide is a climber with pleated blooms, a deep pink, and she is a stunner. Absolute stunner. Highly disease resistant, and she just churns out the blooms like nobody's business. The next rose is the Drift Rose series from Star Roses and Plants. These are the same people that brought us Knockout Roses. And I want to encourage you to add some drift roses to your garden. These are low growing, ground cover type roses that actually make a great impact. They bloom all season long. When I say all season, all season. What I do is after the first flush of bloom, I cut them back a little bit. They flush out again and give me yet another great show. They come in everything from a pink to a peach to an apricot to white and yellow even. Popcorn Drift is one of their best-selling drift roses. I have the peach, the coral, white, and pink in this series, and they do extremely well for me in my garden. Now, Lottie's Love Rose is a magenta colored rose that is a low growing ground cover type rose. She doesn't get very large, but she is one of those that pumps out the blooms. She is pollinator friendly in that she has an open center, which means that the bees and other pollinators can get to the center of the rose. She is a nice front of the bed type rose. She's a rugosa rose, which means we're from the rugosa family, and therefore is very hardy and disease resistant. An honorable mention rose that I would like to talk about. Actually, there are two climbers that I would like to talk about. This one here is called Peggy Martin. Now, she does get a little black spot, but nothing that would prevent me from having her in my garden. She is called the Katrina Rose, and the reason she's called the Katrina Rose is she spent 2 weeks underwater during Hurricane Katrina and came out swinging. This rose grew this tall in 2 years, and she is moving herself across my office, my studio porch, and my goal is to have her wrap around the side because she can get as big as 40 feet tall. Another rose that we should not sleep on is called the Lady Banks Rose. In the spring, she is covered with blooms, and it seems like every inch of her stem is covered. She is a pale butter yellow and absolute gorgeousness. I highly recommend her if you have maybe a shed you want her to grow over, or if you have a big tall arbor that you're trying to fill, because she's also one that gets to be quite large, about 40 feet. She is stunning, though. The only drawback to both her and Peggy Martin is that they do one big flush, and that's just about it. In some areas of the country, people do get some rebloom with the Peggy Martin rose, but there is no reblooming with the Lady Banks. So if you're looking to add her to a garden area, plant something in between, maybe like a clematis or something like that, that'll give you color when she is done blooming. So, whether you're planting a brand new rose garden or just adding a few stars to your existing landscape, I hope this list is helpful in getting you started. Until next time, happy gardening.